Welcome to Latinas on Blast. Again, this is our second episode and we're so excited. So this is Melly G
in the mix.
In other words, Melissa.
In Gardenia.
Yes,
Hey.
Gardenia como la flor. If you guys remember in the first episode, Gardenia represents a flower. So she is como la flor. I mean, look at her. She's so beautiful.
Oh, please stop.
Oh, shit. The fucking mic smacked me.
Everything in my house is beating us up this morning.
Yeah. I came in, because we're in Gardenia's home, and I came in downstairs, and all I hear is like a big bang. And I'm like, what is happening? And her candle, the base of the candle broke.
I didn't slip. It just fell off my hands. It's weird. And then I was doing some challenge from TikTok. And I fell on my ass, you guys.
Yeah, she fell back. And she was in shock. And
we
I
could
just
put like a side video on that.
Oh, yes. We'll put that. We'll put a little bit of that.
No, but
Got it. Can I go like this?
wait, then you're giving birth.
And then 1, 2, 3.
Woo! Oh, damn, you mad.
Come on, boo. You got this. Oh my god. Cordelia, you okay, bro?
Who also reacted was hilarious. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. And then I was all concerned about if she recorded it or not.
That's what she asked me. We were recording each other to try to see. So basically the challenge is if you cross your legs, you have to cross your legs and sit down with your legs crossed. And then once you go to the floor, you have to cross your legs again and try to get up. And so we were recording ourselves to see if we're healthy. And Gardenia, after she fell and basically almost banged her head and her whole body onto that chair, she's like, "Did you record it?" I was like, "Yeah, I recorded that fall."
Yeah, the 3 days I do at the gym don't serve me for nothing. My ass fell straight to the
blame
ground.
the socks. It was the socks, boo. It was
You
the
think
socks.
it was the socks?
You had some slippery socks. You needed them hospital socks. You know the hospital socks that come with that grip. I'm gonna get you some hospital socks.
No, I hate that. I was in the hospital before. That brings me back bad memories.
I have mad at those.
No,
I don't know about you, but I recycle them.
That's what I need right now. Like,
Yeah,
bless
you
that.
need some more Bendita.
Everybody has fallen in that spot. My sister, me, my son.
Nah, she needs a huevo cleanse.
Mm.
I don't know if you guys know about that, but basically, like in the Ecuadorian culture, even in Salvadoran, right?
Yeah. The thing is, like, I have to be confident to do that, because then I feel like, damn, did this really work or not?
Yeah, you have to believe in it.
You have to believe in it. Yes.
You have to believe in it. So we want to talk about, like, I guess our topic for today is what does it mean for a Latina to speak up? Ooh, there's a lot of layers to that.
We could go real deep.
We are about to get spicy.
Hey.
Okay. So, yeah, what does it mean for Latina to speak up? I think we
could go in so many directions. babe.
so many directions. It's like, what does it mean to speak up in your relationships?
In your family. At school.
Mm-hmm.
At work.
At work. Yeah. Well, I think for me, Latina, like being able to speak up, it has been a challenge. I think growing up, like asserting myself. For me, it's been hard to do that.
Mm-hmm. How come, babe?
I think when you speak up, you're being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You're exposing a part of you that's very personal
Mm-hmm.
and sensitive and open, and that is scary.
Really
It's
scary.
So I think there's definitely fear behind that, and the fear stems from like how you see other women, I guess, like that I'm surrounded with, how others respond to them if they try to assert themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like vulnerability is threatening. What do you think, Boo?
You know, when we first constructed the question, right? My mind really went to like, who modeled that for me? Which Latina woman really modeled speaking up in a confident way? And I could think of like a handful, not too many. And I feel like I don't have it. I can't like explain like how to do it. I just know I'm still in the midst of learning that, how to own my voice, how to own my own beliefs, and own that and say it out loud. Like a lot of spaces that I've been in, it's like I'm usually the one with one perspective coming into that, and then hearing like other people's perspective and like seeing if they, what you were saying, respond to it. And we said this, is there's that fear of retaliation, like that fear like, oh shit, now my idea might get shut down because I don't know if other people could relate to it, or does my idea even make sense? That's the other thing. I question myself, what am I bringing up right now makes sense right now? Yeah, and
it does bring up. Yeah,
I have to reassure myself a lot. It does make sense, Gardenia. Own it. That's literally why I tell myself.
It makes sense. It makes complete sense, because I think there's a reason why we hold back. There is, you know, I feel like, I mean, I'm half Colombian, half Ecuadorian. I'm very much close to like my Colombian side, and one of the things that I see like my family members is that when a woman speaks up or tries to address their partner, their often response is to question it, right? Or to dismiss the individual's feelings and
minimize completely.
Minimize it, right? Minimize it. Like, oh, papi, ¿por qué usted dejó o no me gusta que dejó esto ahí? Like, I didn't like that you left that there. And then he responds as, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Why are you starting with me today? And this is actually something that I witnessed in my not my immediate family, but I'm talking about like, you know, my extended family. Yeah. So it's like, ooh, shut down. She was dismissed. Trying to be open about her experience in that moment and addressing that person very kindly and gently, and still it didn't matter. And I feel like that plays into like the machismo that we're exposed to, and I think that is oftentimes like the barrier to us being open and asserting ourselves.
Yeah, and I think like that's why my first question was like to my mind, like, did someone model that for me? Because that maybe that's contributing like why I'm learning that still. And if so many times we witness other women get dismissed, minimized, put down, shut down, shamed in front of other family members. That's the other thing. Shamed in front of other family members for their point of view, then of course, what am I going to do? Become submissive, not question. Yes, papi. Okay, papi.
No, but it's so true. I'm so glad you brought up the embarrassment piece. As I'm reflecting back on like that experience that I discussed like a couple minutes ago, like I saw the impact it had on my family member, you know, and you know, her looking around, I'm looking at, like, it was heartbreaking because she's doing her best to communicate how she feels that there isn't room for her voice. I think if you're exposed to that, it reinforces the message that if you speak up, you won't be heard. If you speak up, you'll get hurt.
You will be belittled.
I don't want to be, yeah.
That's another thing.
Yeah, yes. I think aside from like it being modeled or us being exposed to those type of interactions, like I was, I was previously in I think this is bringing up some of that. Like I was previously in a relationship where, when I'm the type of person that I'm learning to be open with my emotions and transparent, because I really do feel that, by doing so, your relationships can progress, and it I think conflicts allows you to grow with the individual. If you can, resolve things and have that openness, and it's an indication that it could potentially work. So I was practicing that in my relationship, and I think that the times that I would try to communicate how I felt, and I would do things like, I really feel hurt by this, or I really feel that I'm struggling, or I'm worried about this about you, and his response was very similar to the person I spoke about earlier, right? Like my family, like, oh, what do you mean? Why do you feel that way? I don't understand. So it's like, even like, aside from being exposed to those interactions in our families, but when you're also in a relationship with a man that's treating you that way, again, it reinforces the message.
Yeah. And I think we need to also like own up like our accountability as Latina women, that sometimes maybe we give so much power to the man from the beginning because it's modeled. So that's why I said, like, it's a learned behavior. Like, where are we learning how to be submissive, or where are we learning how to really speak up? Communication, where are we learning that? Usually from our family. Those are our first teachers.
Yep.
And so when you're in a relationship and it gets reinforced, right, and you want to change that, how do you know how do you know how to change that, right? It takes a lot of practice, I think.
It does. I think it's so difficult to address things from the beginning when you've learned that you have to be submissive. So it's like, how do you challenge some of what you've already learned? When is it the right time? Like, this sounds very similar to like my family. This sounds normal, right? So it's
am
like,
I crazy for thinking this way? Like, I see my tío or my dad say this. Maybe he is right, because my dad would question,
right.
We put it against like what we have experienced.
We
before.
justify it.
Yeah,
we justify it. It's like, oh well, I see my aunt and my uncle talk to each other like this. Like they worked it out. They've been together for 20 years and they communicate this way. They must be working. So, but there is some accountability. I think having these conversations and just being aware of like the discomfort in the relationship, that's a sign, that's an indication to you that some boundaries are being crossed, right? And so that's an opportunity to assert yourself. But it's hard. It's so hard because there's like we talked about, like there's so many layers to that.
It's hard because also then when you're practicing that skill, right, that's not being modeled for you, you're practicing it let's say in a relationship, it throws off the other person. They're like, oh, she talked back to me. Oh, did she just said that directly to me?
Right.
And then it starts shaking things up. Right. And like I told you before, like what gets me in awe is like the female's response. So like when they, like for example, when I'm trying to assert myself, and like my tía, or I was also in a long-term relationship, my ex-mother-in-law would see that. No, usted no tiene que decir nada. No diga nada. That's literally what my ex-mother-in-law would say. Agache y actúe como si nada.
Act like nothing happened, basically. Act like nothing happened.
I'd be like, what? Did she just tell me that?
Yeah, that's wild to me.
And then what happens there? It gets again reinforced, and it's like, all right, I'm crazy for thinking this way, because it's a woman saying like, no, that's not how you're supposed to communicate.
Right, they're correcting you.
The male voice in the Latino culture, like, I'm not bashing men, but like it holds so much power. It really does. It's been happening for generations, generations. And like here we are, our families came to this country, right? We're in New York, we work in New York City, so we encounter so many like diverse people, and the way they communicate, we start learning how to be assertive. Like that's why I'm thankful that I'm surrounded with people who can communicate in that way. I get to learn, I get exposure, but then when I bring that home, it's a problem.
No, for sure. But I like that you brought that up about how women respond, because it just goes back to reinforcing that same behavior, right? And again, it's not like we're bashing men, but I think we're discussing based on our experience, right? How protective the male members in our family dynamics are by their mothers, by their aunts, by their grandmothers.
What I'm saying. We have to be accountable. Like for me, like one thing that I have worked on in the last couple of years, I started questioning like why we serve in my family, why we serve men first, like at our party. Why is it that all the women just are all in the kitchen and los platos que salen, primero va al tío, al papá, al primo. And I'm like, damn, I worked so hard to make this like potato salad, rice, pollo. Can I eat?
Right. Yes.
So now I'm like, come on. Everybody's going to serve themselves.
Yeah.
I cooked everybody. Let's do like style buffet. Everybody come around, get your plate.
And that's something that we practice in my household. Like my dad, I feel like my dad is very progressive. He he even feels uncomfortable if we try to do something for him, like if we try to serve him. Like that's something that he's like instilled in us. Like it's not necessary for you to serve the men. Yeah, he what he does is like todos pongan los platos en la mesa y todos nos servimos.
Like the buffet style that I'm talking about. The buffet
style, exactly. So I feel like he's someone that has modeled to me, like especially like my parents. Like my mom is a very strong woman. She's very verbal and expressive. And so I noticed her asserting herself with my dad, and he's a listener. So he really does take the time to digest whatever my mom might tell him. So he models that. He models us that, he's open to conversation. He's modeled to us that, it's not necessary for us to put his needs in front of ours. And I think that's where I get it from. Like, and even in my past relationships, the things my dad would always tell me is like, no se deje, Melissa. Same way that you show respect to that individual is the same that you need to, that this person must show respect back to you. And you shouldn't be afraid to speak up. And if you are afraid, then that's something to, to reevaluate your relationship with this person.
My dad is also, I wouldn't say he's like absolutely progressive. I think I would say he's learning to shift from like that machismo style of communication and behaving to like learning like to be like respectful of other women, be aware that we also have needs and our feelings matter. So he's trying because my dad, he is the dad that you have to kind of cater to, like el cafecito en la mañana.
Tan lindo.
Has to go for that. He'd be like, every time I'm on the phone, he'd be like, ¿Dónde está mi café, Garde?
Oh. No, but I mean, there's like acts of kindness, like es parte a veces de la rutina de la gente. Like sometimes, like there's certain routines that doesn't necessarily mean that you are, like you do it because it's like part of like, I don't know. It's like, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's like serving is also, I think in my family, like a love language, like serving others, catering to others.
Right.
But my sisters and I, we have pushback on my dad. Like we like that you can get up and get your own coffee. That you can get up and get your own breakfast. But my dad has also been like a single parent for so long. So I think he also like wishes he had someone who caters to him. So he has 4 daughters. We all could take turns catering to him. Like, it's not a problem, but like, he also has to like own up, like he can take care of himself.
Yeah. But how is he when you push when you how is he when you guys push back?
He gets really upset.
Mm.
He gets upset. And then it's like, entonces, ¿para qué tengo tantas hijas?
Oh my god.
There's nothing wrong with that, but like, it's just like, Dad, come on.
I know.
But my dad's very humorous, so he'll play it off
Yeah,
after a
yeah,
while.
We get upset, but we know he's upset.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's so many girls in my family, so I get to see. So we need to do we should do like an episode on like gender roles, because like there's so much like females in my family, so I see that role like reinforced so much.
But I'm glad I heard you say that he's like open, like he's been challenged, but he's been able to kind of adjust. It sounds like.
Yeah. Like the biggest thing that I have learned from my dad is like, you always want, as a woman, especially like coming to this country, you want to stay on your own feet no matter what. You don't rely on a man for shelter. You don't rely on a man, like on a partner, right? Like you don't rely on your partner for shelter. You don't rely on your partner for finance. Like you need to learn how to be financially free on your own. That's like really what my dad instilled in me and my siblings. And through that was education. Our education was so like important in our family. Like he wasn't so much about like good grades, but he was like, you have to go to school. There's no way you're not going to go to school under my roof.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Because I feel like that also reinforces the message that, you know, sometimes like, I don't know, I guess like you get to survive without this person, right? So you're not dependent on them.
Exactly. That's what I was telling you. Yeah.
I think that's important to think about, because I feel like when we assert ourselves, aside from the fear of being dismissed, the fear of being embarrassed, the fear of shame, the fear of, there's also the fear of losing the person.
Because you're solely dependent in that person. So in our culture, right, women oftentimes are uneducated. We become moms at a really young age, often in our home countries. And then, you know, we're uneducated. We're staying at home, cleaning, cooking. Like, what do we have, like, that we can lean on in case, like, we want to depart from that relationship because there's abuse or violence? What do we lean on? So that's why I think my dad, like, really instilled, like, you need to be independent. And also maybe my dad realized, I don't know, maybe I need to talk to him about this. Like maybe he realized he didn't have all the tools because he was a single parent. So he knew, okay, you got to go to school. I don't have all the tools and the knowledge for you to be like independent, be assertive. So go to school and learn that.
You know, it's a generation from generation. It's a poverty issue, right?
Yeah.
And you know, everyone's message gets passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your dad, you know, chose to deliver a message that was different from the one that's been always delivered to families. Right?
But same as your dad, like that simple thing of like the change in dynamics of serving, especially like dinner time. We're a big deal with meals, right? Like we come together and have a meal. We break the bread. So like your dad like shifting it up, like everybody serves themselves. That's like modeling. We're all equal here. No one's like serving. No one's acting as a servant to another person, unless you really want to show your love to that and stuff like that.
Because it's a difference from expecting it all the time to like you just wanting it to do it como una obra de caridad, like an act of kindness. So because exactly that, it reinforces the message that we're equals. So even if you speak up, like it's okay. I know it's not the same else in other spaces, in other households.
Yeah. I think over time I have learned to appreciate my dad. Yeah, and I think like our dads have been like very influential male figures. Like, maybe good and bad.
They have their flaws.
Yeah. I think that's why I'm also learning. Everybody has their own flaws, even our like favorite people like my dad.
Yeah.
And I think like also I brought this up because like I was reading this quote and it said like behind every independent woman, every independent, confident woman, there's a progressive dad. And that really stuck out to me because it's like, that's how I feel about my dad. Like, yes, he's flawed, but there's so much that I appreciate that he's instilled in me.
I love that. Thanks, Boo, for sharing that.
You're welcome, babe.
And I think, you know, thankfully we have like people in our lives that are able to ingrain some of those beliefs, those positive beliefs that allows us to take up space as women, Latina women. But it is challenging either way. Like,
it is, because we're trying to like figure it out at home, right? And then we walk into spaces like school or work, where oftentimes maybe we're like the only Latina in the space. We're learning how to like assert ourselves, and then we walk into a space where everybody has a style of communication of asserting themselves and being like direct. And then we walk in and we're like, oh man, this is how it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, I feel like when I look at everyone, I'm like, wow, like I want to be like that. Like I wish I was that comfortable to take up space. But there's always like this little voice in my head, like when we have to speak up in like our meetings, or when I know I have to present, and then there's this little voice in my head that's like, Melissa, something bad's gonna happen. So it's like challenging that. Like that's the narrative. Like again, that goes back to the narrative that you know we're being told from other folks in our family, or that we see from others. It's like, you speak, something bad will happen.
And I don't know about you, babe. I'm curious. Like, now something just came to my mind, but I'm going to say it because I'm working in therapy. Like, when I assert myself, I don't know if this is like the way also my dad has like encouraged us to behave. But like, if I assert myself, I often feel like, oh, fuck, am I being disrespectful? And those two, I'm working in this in therapy still, so I don't have all the answers. I don't want to give all the answers because I don't have them. But like those two things, assertive and respect, I think like if a woman oftentimes in our culture speaks up, oh, she's disrespectful. She went behind my word, or she's saying something that's going to contradict me. You're disrespectful. And respect is so big in our community. And so that's why I struggle. I have oftentimes talked to people. I'm like, oh my goodness, did that come up as disrespectful? And they'll be like, you said it the way it has to be said, Gardenia. And I need that reassurance often to be like, okay, I deserve, my voice matters. I deserve to have a seat at the table no matter what. And I'm communicating that.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I feel like that definitely some of that, because I feel like when I speak up, when I'm being assertive in my relationships or at work, there's always this fear of retaliation, or there's this fear of my words being misconstrued and it being taken aggressive. And I think that ties back to like what you said, like if you're being aggressive, you're being rude, then you're being disrespectful, right? So I think it does go back to that. It's like, am I being disrespectful? Am I being aggressive? Is this person going to take it, you know, in a way that can impact our relationship? But you know what? Like, one thing that I learned is that we don't have control over how the person chooses to interpret our words, how the person chooses to interpret our tone. And they're going to have their own individual experience. And I think it goes back to like holding control over that, right? Like I need to make sure that I'm not being disrespectful. Like I need reassurance. Like but it's like we can't always get that, right? Because then it's like we're shifting the focus from ourselves to the other person. But we matter too. Like our voice matters, and however that person chooses to respond to us, that's their experience. That's however that's
but again, choice. I guess it's like what we were saying before, the catering. Like we want to be able to hold that person's reaction. Console them. Comfort them. And that's what we do. So oftentimes I catch myself, like, people be like, why use, like, oh, babe, come over here. Like, it's in term of an endearment, but sometimes I'm like, am I being, like, too overly nice because I'm trying to be respectful of the other person? Okay. So sometimes when we're trying to be assertive, we throw in, like,
something sweet. Yes. I'm like, oh, like, why do you have to, like, it's kind of like beating around the bush.
Yeah.
Like a little bit. Like, it's like, so I remember when I had to address someone, like where I used to work before. And then I was like, so, like, starting very gentle, like, rather than just going like, hey, like, can we talk about this? This is really something that's affecting me. Like, it was more like, so, like, I know we've worked really great together. It's like, I have to cater to, like, they're just, like, I don't want them to be uncomfortable.
We're trying to protect them.
But I also think we're trying to protect ourselves. Because if we're starting off gentle, then our assumption of that would be that they're not gonna mistreat us, or they're not gonna get upset, right? Because we're being nice. So we're protecting ourselves at the same time. That is
so real, babe. That is so motherfucking real. Oof. Yeah.
So yeah, guys, I think it's a working process. But I think it takes having these conversations to gain awareness of where it's stemming from. What does it feel like to be in those spaces at work, in your intimate relationships?
Yeah, I think we went really deep right now, babe. And what I hope maybe out of this episode, that this can empower people to stand by Latina women as allies. And if you see a Latina woman struggling, like, go up to her, like, okay, I saw that was really hard for you. Maybe this can work next time. Because sometimes we just don't know how to communicate that. And it takes other people to become our allies to feel like, all right, I can do this. You know, like the practicing. Yeah, that's why oftentimes, like at work, I particularly listen to people who assert themselves very well, that maybe align to the way I want to learn to assert myself. And I pay attention to people, like how they assert themselves via email. Because oftentimes too, like, I'm also too nice on email.
Guys, something just moved. Something just fell.
Why is our place haunted today? Agua bendita, that's what we need. Agua bendita.
We need a level cleanse, girl. Everything's falling apart.
But yeah, I think, like, maybe, you know, this conversation can empower Latina women and also empower allies to stand by us.
Not even like Latinas, like just people of color.
Yes.
Like, I think, you know, we work in a predominantly white workplace, and I think being in that space can be very challenging. So checking in with, you know, of colors, Latinas, because if they're quiet, there might be coming up, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes I'm even quiet because I'm uncomfortable. Comfortable. And I really do appreciate that, you know, in our work we do check in with each other individually, and if someone is quiet, we're like, oh, like what's on your mind, right? So that's helpful, because then that encourages us to practice being open,
exactly,
right, about our experiences. So yeah, I think that's a great way to end this episode with what you just said, right? I hope that this is an episode to empower others to really like use their voice, and, you know, being gentle with yourself, because it comes with there's a lot of reasons why, but it's also not impossible.
No,
it takes practice.
It does. This is practice
right now for us. Absolutely. So yeah, guys, so we're gonna wrap up. It's been so much fun. I feel like this episode just made me self-reflect so much.
Yeah.
And then I realized
we went deep.
We went so deep.
So please take care of yourself. If anything came up that kind of like stir up some feelings, like maybe take a walk after this, or like drink some water, maybe debrief, talk to somebody about this.
You know how in the first episode we talked about, like, we're gonna act social worky?
Yes. I'm acting social worky right now. Oh God. Check.
No, but I think that goes back to, like, you know, the importance of like taking care of yourself. And I think that's something that we practice, it's something that we practice, right? And like what we're told to do in our work.
Working too, but also like I have listened to podcasts that get really heavy, that exhausts me. So that's why I kind of also threw that up there, because sometimes there's topics that we haven't even like become aware of, and then we listen to a podcast and we're like, whoa, I behave that way, I think that way.
Oh yeah,
I've seen that.
It's intense. It's intense.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely take some space and time for yourself.
Maybe light up a candle.
Yes,
nice
like
little
Rosa
bath.
Maria. Oh, yeah, she's about to go to sleep though.
I'm about to eat. I'm hungry.
Yeah, guys, take care of yourselves.
Ciao.
Bye. Melissa G in the mix.